Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. Harvest continues at a breakneck pace across the American countryside, and farmers are planning ahead for next year. We did find one place that harvest hasn't quite conquered yet, and that's outside Peoria, Illinois, home of Haley Underwood. She's the Nutrien Agronomy Trial Lead. And Haley, thanks for talking with us.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me back.
Now, the last time you and I had the chance to catch up, it was at the Farm Progress Show, so I'm hoping you could remind our audience what it is the Agronomy Trial Lead does there at Nutrien.
Absolutely. So I'm the Agronomy Trial Lead on our Nutrien Agronomy team. What that means is I focus on setting up on-farm grower trials across the U.S., as well as working on our innovation farms across mostly the Central Corn Belt. And then we do have one out in Selma, California, working on trials with kind of new upcoming products to place on different acres and to try and make sure that we're delivering data on a local level for our customers.
All right. Well, let's talk about some of the trials that you've got going for this crop year. Can you fill us in on some of the details?
Sure. So we've got over 300 trials out this year on specific grower acres. Several of those are looking at various Loveland products, so our proprietary brand, looking at nutritionals, various stress mitigating products. Infinity is one of our newer nitrogen products, which has 3 modes of action to help fix nitrogen in the soil, help liberate some of that nitrogen that might be tied up, and then also help to work on bringing more of the nitrogen to the plant. So lots of work on those specific products to help test them where growers might not be quite bought in on the product all the way, and just get a feel for what those products can do for their specific operation.
It's nice to be able to hold proof in your hands of what a product can accomplish. And so do you have any results quite yet for those trials, Haley?
Sure. So we've started to see results come in slowly for those on-farm grower trials. Nothing too crazy that I can share just yet. But with our innovation farm trials that we have trials in Champaign, Illinois, Owensboro, Kentucky, Winterville, Mississippi, and then out in Selma, California, those farms have all been harvested. And so some of the results we've already seen come in from those. And what I can kind of share is that each farm has a trial looking at kind of good, better, best, or minimal to high management type of trials. And really what we're seeing with those is that not always the highest level of management has the best return on investment. And so I think with the farm economy that we are in right now, we need to think about being really efficient with our operations, with the products that we're applying. And so with these trials that we're doing at our innovation farms, that can help our growers to kind of tease through the wide variety of products that are being thrown at them and really focus in on the ones that are providing the best bang for the buck and returning value on their acre.
Finding a way to return value is so key. So Haley, for farmers who are curious about products from Nutrien, they want to get their hands on some of that trial data, either on farm or innovation farm, where would you send them?
Absolutely. So our innovation trial data is published in a hardbound book that your crop consultant can get to you. We also have an online version available through a QR code. So work with your crop consultant to get access to those. And then through our on-farm trial data, we do try and keep that a little bit more behind closed doors. We don't want to share grower information with everybody. But if you're interested in specific products, your crop consultant can put you in contact with some of that data to look at various products that you might be interested in.
All right. Haley Underwood, Agronomy Trial Lead with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Thank you so much for talking with us this week.
Thanks, Mike. Have a great day.
Folks, you can learn more at nutrienagsolutions.com. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up with these volatile commodity markets at farmfutures.com. Joining us this week to dig into the commodity markets and things agriculture is Mark Rosenbaum. He's the Senior Grains Analyst with Terrain. And Mark, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So you talk the grains markets, which we'll get into in just a little bit, but you also dig into input prices, which have become quite the hot topic in the world of agriculture this fall. Mark, let's look ahead to 2026, big categories. What are you watching for input prices next year?
Yeah, so as I look out to 2026, unfortunately, I think we're looking at higher input prices on total. as I look out there, and that's what I've been telling our farm credit customers to think about those and start planning for those across a variety of categories. That includes fertilizer, some chemicals probably also, repair costs probably to a little bit, some extent also. I think the one area of optimism probably that I have is the fuel prices may be similar to this year. Not that they're going to get significant relief on that front, but those might hold steady.
On the fertilizer front, how much of an increase are you expecting, and is it just related to nitrogen, or do you see N, P, and K all moving higher?
Unfortunately, it's kind of across the board. Phosphates are expensive. Potash prices have came up some from where they were earlier this year. But the nitrogen complex is kind of what I've been paying attention to quite a bit here. We've seen elevated urea and liquid prices, and more recently we've seen anhydrous prices come up to bring those relative long-run ratios closer to their long-run average, but all of them are higher than they were before.
All right, and then the chemistry front. You also see some potential for price increases as we get to next year. Can you talk through what could be driving that?
Yeah, the folks at North Dakota State put together some estimates on what the tariff impacts on the chemicals market might be. And those tariff costs are expected to be higher for 2026 than they were in 2025. And so to the extent that those get passed along to the producer, I do expect chemical prices to be higher in 2026.
So in your conversations with growers, with lenders across the country, how are they adapting to this? How are they planning for these expected hikes next year?
Yeah, so we're watching it closely, looking at both the input costs relative to grain prices and looking for opportunities there. I think we're in a time period right now that they're monitoring things, working on making those decisions for what things might look like next year. But we obviously hope to see either a little bit higher grain prices or some relief on the input cost side. But I think we're waiting to see what that shakes out to be.
Well, let's get into these grain markets. Let's talk about this corn market. We've seen combines running. This harvest has been moving very, very quickly. We're no longer getting crop progress reports during the shutdown, of course. What have you heard from the field? How are yields shaping up this year?
Yeah, so I think the big theme that I've heard in talking to our farm credit folks is variability. We've heard lots of stories of variability across the region, and so in the absence of those government numbers, I don't know exactly where to guess that those yields might be, but I think the market at least expects corn yields to come down a little bit. But I think on the bean side that we've seen enough reports of good bean yields that the probability of that average yield coming down significantly is probably less than in the corn side.
All right, so if I understand you right, we're probably going to see bean yields stay relatively flat. There's the potential to come down.
Yeah.
But corn, more likely to see these yields move down as we get close to that January final?
Yeah, I think it's more likely on the corn side.
All right. Well, there's a lot of interesting things to discuss as we get into the demand front for both corn and soybeans. We'll do that as soon as we come back. We'll have more with Mark Rosenbaum, Senior Grain Analyst with Terrain. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up with these volatile commodity markets at farmfutures.com. Joining me this week to delve into these commodity markets is Mark Rosenbaum. He's the Senior Grains Analyst with Terrain. And Mark, we talked about the harvest picture for corn and soybeans, but I want to get your thoughts on the demand picture. We've had good news over the past couple of weeks in ethanol. Can we see this ethanol grind continue to climb as we get into 26?
I think that's one area of optimism for domestic corn use. I think it's going to be a somewhat slow rollout to expand the ethanol use, but I think that's probably, from my perspective, a best case. We continue to see this slow demand growth, continue to slowly use more corn for ethanol over the long run. We don't see a sudden spike in ethanol use all at once, and so it's just kind of an underlying support to the domestic corn market. California's recent approval of E15, are we going to see that actually make a dent in the balance sheet for the corn market? Over time. I think it'll take time to show up. It's not going to be tomorrow, but I think that's a good thing because it'll take up more and more corn over a period of time. Absolutely, and it will be taking up more and more corn that is being fought over by exporters. This is one of the ongoing great stories of the 2025 commodity markets, this corn export surge. Mark, do you think this will continue all the way through the end of 2025? It's shaping up like there's a good chance for it too. We've seen export sales begin the year at near record levels, and then I think, as we moved into the beginning of the marketing year, we crossed into record levels. We're a little north of 1 billion bushels of forward commitments as of the last report we got.
Right.
Presumably, we're probably a little bit farther ahead of that now, even in the absence of reports. But to the extent that we can keep that going, I think that's a good story for U.S. corn producers.
Now, I've heard some analysts say that Mexico's huge orders, at least a chunk of that, is because we've kept so many cattle bottled up south of the Mexican border. If that border were to open up, would you expect Mexican corn imports to slow down?
Only fractionally.
Okay.
We took a look at some quick numbers on that, and it's less than 100 million bushel. We're looking at 40 to 50 on total. So, even if you take part of those out for part of the year and send them up, we're not looking at a drastic decline in Mexican imports.
Okay, well, that is good to hear. So now let's look ahead to next year. We do have a couple government reports taking us into 2026. As you think about corn demand for next year, there's a lot of expectations that feed is going to gobble up a lot of it by the USDA. Do you agree?
So I think that's one area that I probably disagree a little bit with them on. When you look at the expected livestock production and grain animal units that are out there, the increase is probably smaller than what they've shown on that residual feed-in residual component of the balance sheet. So I do expect that to come down a little bit over time. I think the important thing here is that even if we see yields come down a little bit in the future, some of that residual component could come back out, and so the stock position could remain relatively unchanged as we look through this marketing year.
All right. Taking a look over at the soybean market, we of course don't know if China is buying with export sales closed, but let's take China out of the equation. How do soybean exports look to the rest of the world?
They're starting off slow,
Okay.
I think is the short answer. I think in order to hit the current export target, we would need to see a pretty quick rise in those export sales to hit that target in the absence of China. But we are doing a little bit of business to other destinations.
All right. And domestically, crush continues to grow. Is that still the case?
Yeah. I think that's probably the best part of the soybean balance sheet at the moment is the domestic crush side. And to the extent that we can continue to export higher and higher quantities of meal, that's a good thing there. And then use more of the soybean oil for biofuel.
Absolutely. Crush the beans here, capture that value on American shores, utilize that oil, and then sell the meal to somebody who wants it.
Yep.
It's a winning market.
It is.
Fantastic. Mark Rosenbaum, Senior Grains Analyst with Terrain, thank you so much for joining us this week.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, Greg, it sounds like the Pacific Northwest might be due for a pattern shift next week. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, much of the West is expected to see a significant change in weather. Just the usual stuff that you get as you head through the month of October. Cooler to colder air building on southward. The snowpack, by the way, farther north and northwest across Siberia is mounting very quickly, a little faster and heavier than normal. Might be a trip off of when and how much cold air ultimately comes into play, of which some will begin to settle on southward in this large scale upper trough in the Pacific Northwest. Gusty winds, colder air, lowering snow levels. Livestock managers be ready for that, but significant moisture too will probably start around 9,000 feet and get down to about 5,000 feet and even a bit lower as the week wears on. And as this trough strengthens and deepens, we'll get some snow across the Cascades, the northern Sierra, across the Divide country as well. Rainy and snowy mix across parts of Big Sky country and farther to the east. A couple of outbreaks of showers and thunderstorms, and this is a pretty impressive but blocked upper trough. There's another one much like this over the eastern states, and in between sets the plains of the Corn Belt, hence opportunities for field work and harvest expected there. Southern extension of this trough, and this is the remnant moisture from Priscilla. Yes, another one of these Pacific El Nino driven by our accounts, tropical feed that will shift northward moisture with downpours, flash flood potential. Had some of that last week. It's back into play this week, and rain as well across the central and southern valleys of California. Note across the plain states, shower activity, some thunderstorms as well, perhaps heavy and severe, but some of those winter wheat fields need more rain, and you'll get it as well. More tropical downpours, parts of California, desert southwest into West Texas cotton, head of it and north of it, and that upper wind flow from the south. Scattered showers and thunderstorms, despite the October calendar date, Mike, could be heavy and severe.
All right. Is that going to cause some harvest hiccups for Corn Belt growers next week?
It may in some of the western and northwesternmost reaches of the complex out towards the Corn Palace Sioux Empire region, but not until the middle and more likely late portions of the week. Pretty good range of temperatures. Had some scattered frost pockets over the past week to 10 days out of the Dakotas, parts of Wisconsin, down into northern Illinois, Ohio, and points on northward. No certainly detriment to the back 40 out there since we are in harvest mode. And that will continue on in many eastern through southern areas of the Corn Belt. Did have some rain, by the way, about a week to 10 days ago. 1 to 2 across this corridor, up to 4 or 5 in this corridor. So there was some drought relief, but again, most of the action as the week wears on. Corn Palace on westward, scattered showers and thunderstorms on the increase. Some of those could be heavy and severe. And here's the eastern flank of Priscilla's moisture into the Rio Grande Valley, parts of the southwestern states. Texas warmth continues on, high pressure across the Delta and points on eastward along this boundary with Gulf moisture. No tropical systems, but we'll pick up scattered showers and thunderstorms again down through the Gulf Coast, parts of Florida, downpours and perhaps some flooding potential sections of the southwest. A late summer feel back into play in the southern plains, Mike, along with a scattering of showers and thunderstorms. Those newly sown winter wheat fields appreciate the moisture.
What are you watching as you look all the way to the East Coast, Greg?
Pretty quiet weather pattern as it applies to the Corn Belt. However, note this system. It's what we call a subtropical weather system. Part mid-latitude, part tropical, and you put a couple of upper air waves in here and you've got a windy, squally spell of weather. Half a foot of rain may come down, but the rain is actually needed in this part of the upper Midwest and areas actually of the Northeast and New England. Back into the upper Midwest, nothing going on. Quiet, high pressure and control, warm days. That system is still lingering for the end portion of the week here. High pressure across the Midwest and points on westward. Another feel of late summertime. The combines will be rolling with time across much of the Midwest and points on westward. Meanwhile, across the Gulf Coast area, scattered showers and thunderstorms. The downpours continuing through Florida. Here's the extent of that subtropical system across the Carolinas, boy, the Outer Banks taking a lashing. Meanwhile, pretty quiet setup finally over the southeastern states. Warm high pressure for the end part of the week. Scattered showers and thunderstorms continue across Texas, south end of the winter wheat fields. And boy, welcome moisture. It's been aggravating from time to time, but the rainfall has been appreciated, ending the drought much of Florida. We'll have that 4-week forecast here coming up a little bit later on in the broadcast.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness, ladies and gentlemen. Innovation continues in agriculture, and it continues at a number of different companies all throughout the ag value chain. One of those companies is Central Life Sciences. Joining me now is John Mays. He serves as the Senior Director for Grain and Specialty Ag Products. John, thanks for talking with us.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's talk a little bit about Central Life Sciences. What all does the company do, and what markets do you guys work in?
Yeah, it's quite extensive. We cover everything from cattle to home pets to grain and specialty, and that's a broad division within itself. We cover everything from turf grass to ornamental, and the largest portion of our business unit is the post-harvest storage component, which protects grains, whether it's corn, rice, wheat, and it's growing in popularity. A lot of growers are seeing that they need help as they try to protect their grains so that they can store it longer, so they have better chances of capitalizing on market trends that happen when they're able to store it longer and have a chance to watch for markets when they increase.
That's a great point. Stored grain is like a savings account, but that's only true if the grain is in the same condition when you take it out as when you put it in. So let's talk about those products you have for row crop farmers. How is CLS working to make this grain stay in condition?
Right. So we have a couple of products that are used widely throughout the U.S. and one of them is Gravista. This product comes in a dry and a liquid form, depending on if you have limited water on your farm, if you're doing on-farm storage, we have a dry formulation. A lot of growers use that, and a lot of growers set up mini spray rigs that can apply this product directly to the grain as it's coming out of the field. The second product it's called Diacon, and it's just a one AI product that's a insect growth regulator, and it stops the population from breeding within the grain mass, and it really helps to protect that grain long term.
All right. And so those products are out there. They've been out there for years. What have you seen from the growers who have been utilizing them on the ground?
Yeah, and it's funny. We over the last couple of years, we've seen the number of growers from Midwest states and the Great Northern Plains. Those calls have become very frequent because growers are having to store a little bit longer, and temperatures are, getting a little warmer and staying warmer throughout the U.S. And it causes bug populations to increase within their, silos. So we've seen a lot of areas that typically have not had bug problems that are now having an issue. And a lot of it's market timing, but a lot of it is the population and bugs throughout the U.S. They're heading north. And in the South, we've had a problem for years, and growers are used to fighting that problem. But throughout the Eastern Corn Belt, Central Corn Belt, and then out west, growers are really seeing benefits to using these products.
For those growers in the Northern Corn Belt who maybe haven't dealt with bugs before, maybe it's a recent phenomenon, what should they be watching in their stored grain as evidence that, whoa, there's an insect problem here I need to control?
Right. And frequent monitoring and taking samples and watching, making sure that, your bins before harvest are clean, and you've, done all the sanitation efforts that you can, doing a pre-bin spray with one of these products is really good, especially for Vista. It comes in a quart size now, so growers can get that readily at, their local retailer, and do some front end work that will save them a lot of time and effort and potential rejections when they go to deliver later in the year.
Oh, let's talk about what kind of benefits come with grain protection. You mentioned some of the obvious ones right there. You got clean grain, you're able to deliver a clean product. But over time, do these advantages start to pile up?
Oh, absolutely. For the longest time, and I've been in agriculture my whole life, we've looked at grain damage. It's a problem with maybe the corn head caused some damage, or the lack of weight was truly just a moisture component as the grain dried down. What we've seen in our trials and the USDA and other people we've worked with, universities throughout the US, we have found that a lot of loss in the dry matter that happens with grain is caused directly by bugs. And growers need to understand that, honestly, they don't see it because when they load it into the bin, they don't have really an accurate weight, but when they deliver, that's when they're losing, because the damage has already been done. So when you deliver, there's no real accurate count as to how much you've actually lost. But we've seen studies where anywhere from 5 to 20% of the grain, depending on how long it's stored, can be lost because of bug damage.
That is a huge, huge impact. John, if we've got viewers who want to stop bugs from literally eating their yield, where would you send them for more information from Central Life Sciences?
So you can go to bugfreegrains.com, or you can check with your local retailer, and they can help you get that information and help you ultimately save money. It's a great product.
It's a great product, and now is the time we need to protect every bit of that farm margin as we can. John Mays from Central Life Sciences, thank you so much for joining us here this week.
Thank you.
Folks, leave it here. We'll have more right after this.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Pioneer. Plant with confidence. Plant the #1 corn and soybean seed of the U.S. Pioneer.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to This Week in Agribusiness. We go now with our friend Max Armstrong up to Michigan for our next installment of the BASF Plant Smart, Grow Smart series.
This farming operation has a rich history, an interesting history, and how do you fit into it?
So I'm a grandson. My grandpa, Arnold Swerk, began the farm back in the 50s, probably late 40s, 50s. His sons then would have been my Uncle Mike's work and Larry's work, continued on the farm, and then I was a high school kid and I started working on the farm, in high school, Saturdays, and then that evolved to eventually after I got married, I think 1994, I started farming full-time.
Share with us your crop mix.
So of the 7,800 acres that we farm, our 4 crops that we grow currently are corn, wheat, sugar beets, and we grow dry beans. Currently we're in the middle of about 2,900 acres of a dry bean harvest. That'll finish up probably this weekend. We have around 2,000 acres of corn, field corn, both locations combined. We're part of a local Michigan sugar cooperative in mid-Michigan area here where we grow sugar beets. We've got 1,680 acres of sugar beets this year. That's pretty stagnant. Every year is right around that same amount of acres. And then we grow wheat for a local mill, flour mill right in the area, and usually right around between 800 and 900 acres, 1,000 acres of wheat every year.
What kind of weed pressures do you get here?
So we're starting to get a little more of a diverse weed pressure here. That is something else that's coming up from the south. We're getting more weed resistant around this area.
Just a matter of time, right?
Just a matter of time. I mean, it's moving up, and we're trying to limit that as best we can. We've started with some of the BASF products in corn as well. Verdict is a product that we use as a pre-emerge herbicide. We've been using that for years. We actually started growing some conventional corn again this year because Roundup doesn't do what Roundup did, say, 5 years ago. I won't say it doesn't help. It's not still a tool, but Roundup won't get these weeds that are becoming resistant. So we grow conventional corn, and then we go and we use a product called Status now for BASF as kind of a bullet-proof program.
Farmers have different tolerance levels for weeds. That shows during the season as you're driving down the road. Will you take a little bit of a weed challenge out there? Will you accept that?
We don't. I mean, we take pride in delivering a clean crop to the elevator because we only store our corn. And then on top of that, I mean, if you let it go 1 year, it's going to be twice as bad the next year. And you let it go. So that's a legacy thing. We don't want to leave our next guys with just a disastrous, farms with nothing but weeds.
Thank you, Max. And folks, you can see the full Plan Smart Grow Smart series online at plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Well, it's been dry across much of the Corn Belt in recent weeks. That might change next week, Greg, it sounds like. Can you give us some details?
Yeah, first in the western Corn Belt areas, and then with time, maybe in some eastern sections and into the upper Midwest, all on how these tropical systems play out. We still think it's an El Nino driving feature across the Pacific. These are coming inland here, and boy, the downpours from the Pacific Northwest will shift on southward as the week wears on. Late in the week, another run of maybe a little tropical wave moving into parts of the southwest Atlantic. This is a subtropical low, the combination of a Midwest low and a tropical low, but there may be upwards of 80 inches of rain and 50-mile-an-hour winds along some of the coastal areas. And late in the week, the potential for some rain in the upper Midwest and points on westward. But there'll be lots of days this week, Mike, for outdoor work and the resumption of harvest activities. Although we did see some nice rain the past week to 10 days, southern areas of the Great Lakes region, Corn Belt locales, and down in the Ohio Valley, too.
We sure did, Greg. Now, as you look out for temperatures for the week of October 20th, what do you expect?
Still lots of warmth on the weather maps and charts here, and here it is. And this is then the result of a tropical system still making their way slingshot around the Bermuda High out of the Atlantic. So readings are still into the 70s, pushing 80 across parts of the Corn Belt and the Plains, a bit below average across the western states. The trough is still there, and still a feed of tropical moisture off the Pacific into the winter wheat belt, much needed here. And yeah, maybe some harvest delays back into the western Corn Belt. Wet weather mostly attributed to a frontal boundary and a tropical wave across the Atlantic, and more moisture too for the Pacific Northwest. So some opportunity for additional drought relief as we move through that time frame.
Do you see any temperature modification for our trick-or-treaters out there on Halloween?
I don't think anything too terribly spooky. You know, sometimes this time of the year we can get these big cold air intrusions. I certainly remember them as a kid trick-or-treating, and multi-layers over the costume. But look at the warmth here over the eastern part of the country. The western reaches are still a bit below average, and the jet stream pattern is still active. And here is the probably more significant run at some harvest delays as we move through the last few days of October and early November into the eastern Corn Belt. Normal moisture for the southeastern states, back to dry time in through Southern California, and additional moisture, probably some snow in the higher peaks of the Cascades of the Pacific Northwest.
Do you start to see the temperatures coming down for that first full week of November?
They're coming down some. They're moderating a little bit over the northeast and New England. This is going to be a pretty much mild to warm to wet, then transition back to normal, then finally cold by the holidays. But there's a temperature pattern for you. And opportunities for outdoor work and harvest will be underway across the plains and back into the Corn Belt with time.
This segment is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of versatile high-speed discs and achieve better results with every pass. Visit Brandt.ca for more. This week, we're checking in with Bruce Blythe. He's a senior editor with Farm Futures. And Bruce, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Ordinarily, the second week of the month, we'd have you on to talk about the World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates report from the USDA, but we're not this week, Bruce, because there is no WASDE report. What all government reports do you rely on as a market analyst?
Well, the monthly WASDE is a big one. It's among the most market-moving reports the USDA puts out, as well as crop production, which was also scheduled today, but is not happening and may not happen at all this month. So, yes, it does leave kind of a data void for people who are in the markets and follow the markets.
So for somebody who makes their living watching these numbers and interpreting the information flows, where do you go? What do you lean on? What other data sources do you use during a time like this?
Well, there are a number of analysts and advisors who are in the grain markets and are still putting out estimates on corn and soybean yields, production, supply, demand type of figures. So that is still available out there, and you can find a lot of it through just a basic internet search. So there is still information out there from the analyst community, from the trading firms. But not having USDA leaves a big void to fill, and I think the markets are kind of showing that right now, and the holding pattern we're seeing the last few weeks. So
we do notice that absent information, people tend to get a little quiet. They get a little cagey with their trading, don't they?
That's true. It's kind of a holding pattern. We think the corn yield's going to come down, but USDA is sort of the official final word on that count. So yes, it's a sideways kind of market right now, and it could be that way for a while as long as we don't have key USDA reports coming out.
In the time period when we don't have these reports, are there any resources you could help share with our audience for them to maintain their understanding of these complex markets?
Well, this definitely poses challenges for a journalist as well as anybody else in these markets, and I think it just kind of, you got to go back to your basics and double down on your research and digging skills. Just track the markets even closer. Let the markets tell you what's happening. And so I'm in a lot of ways just doing the same thing I've been doing, which is to keep a very close eye on the futures, the spreads, basis. I think the grain basis will tell you a lot. Your local basis, those numbers are still available from USDA. So not everything is shut down from USDA. There are sources out there. And I think there's a number of good advisory firms out there that are still publishing. They're functioning as news organizations and putting out estimates and so forth. So.
And of course, the talented team at Farm Futures has continued writing and providing analysis through all of this.
Of course, yes.
We appreciate that. And Bruce, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Now on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. We welcome to the Tractor Shed this weekend a real nice looking John Deere 730 diesel, and we have the whole story on it because one of the fellows who helped restore this tractor was at the dealership when it was sold in 1959. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Lundell Plastics. They have many products that would come in useful on your farm: livestock sorting panels, those hitch savers to protect the tractor hitch from the implement, auger upgrade parts, LundellPlastics.com. Well, Peyton Kaplinger in Ohio restored a tractor with his grandfather, and he knows just about the whole story on this tractor because his grandfather was working at the dealership at the age of 21 in 1959 when this tractor was sold. Look at this John Deere 730 diesel. It was sold at Eaton, Ohio at the Conley John Deere dealership. And Jay Unger was there working at the dealership when he was 21 years old. And all these years later, he has worked to restore this tractor with his grandson, Peyton Kaplinger. Peyton said to me, you know, it's interesting that his family now owns the farm where this tractor was delivered brand new. It was delivered new for a price of $3,250. We know that because Mr. Unger was there back in 1959 when that John Deere diesel 730 was sold. Mark Stock is here now this weekend again with his Big Iron Report.
Well, hello, Max. We've got some breeding livestock selling here on BigIron.com. Several bred heifers and cow-calf pairs will sell on Tuesday, October the 14th. On October the 15th, an outstanding lineup of farm machinery will sell, including a 2020 Hagie STS-14 self-propelled sprayer selling for Raleigh Staub from Ord, Nebraska. The Co-op Credit Union from Montevideo, Minnesota will sell a 2022 John Deere 560M silage round baler, plus a low-hourred 1990 John Deere 4055 tractor. Also on October the 15th, 117 acres of Henry County, Iowa land will sell on a virtual auction. Land is located 20 miles northwest of Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Also, 11.93 acres will sell for the Dean Tager Estate. This is an acreage site located 6 miles north of Burlington, Iowa. Big Iron and Sullivan Auctioneers will be conducting land auctions now through the end of the year. Land selling in Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, Colorado, South Dakota. If you want to invest in farmland, please visit BigIron.com and SullivanAuctioneers.com. If you have land to sell, call us 1-800-WE-SELL-8.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Gehringoff. Check out the new XFR 50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than the closest competitor at Gehringoff.com. Gehringoff, proudly built in the American heartland. This week, we're getting to know Cash Majerus. He's serving as the Nebraska FFA State Vice President. And Cash, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Tell me a little bit about your background. Did you grow up on a farm or in the countryside?
I grew up in the country with like a small herd of cattle. Wasn't a big farm. I show cows, so I have a little show stock. That's about it. Just a country kid with a passion for ag and love cows.
All right. Was it that passion for agriculture that made you want to be a part of FFA?
Yeah, it sparked the interest for sure. I was looking for classes to join, and my guidance counselor was like, this class is about animal science, and I jumped right in, hoping that I could learn a little bit more about cows and what they have to offer for us and what I can do to improve my herd. So
that's fantastic. And it must have worked because you've stayed in the organization, risen to leadership, of course, now serving at the state level. And what are you looking forward to as this year comes into focus, Cash?
I'm looking forward to mostly just like meeting a bunch of people. My theory is if I can, I want to shake everyone's hand I meet. I just love to introduce myself to people and get to know them for who they are and their stories. So I'm excited to be able to experience that and get to make more connections and grow through FFA by leading the younger generations and showing the older generations what we have to offer.
That's fantastic. Now, future plans, do you hope to make a career in agriculture?
Yeah, my goal right now is to make it into vet school. I want to be a veterinarian. So
fantastic.
I'm an animal science major right now and hopes to get into vet school in a couple of years.
Well, we certainly need more large animal veterinarians, Cash. We wish you the best of luck. Thanks for filling us in this week.
Thank you.
Well, our tech correspondent, Chad Colby, has always kept us up to speed on what's happening in the world of agricultural technology. And one piece of tech that he has focused on a lot are drones. And he joins us now with maybe the latest update to that story.
You're not wrong, Mike. We've had entry-level drones on the show before, but I'm super excited about our tech segment this week. This is a new drone kit I got from Flying Ag. It features the Mini 5 Pro, comes with a case, 3 batteries, a controller with a display, so no more using your smartphone or tablet. You can see here I'm just simply folding out the drone, And once you fold it out, it automatically starts, which is a new feature. Something else is new. The kit comes with ND filters. And on a bright, sunny day, it's so nice to put a filter in and make sure your imagery does not get overexposed. And I can tell you, it works exceptionally well. Now, this drone is under 249 grams, which is great. So it's underneath all the FAA regulation just because it's simply very light. And the nice part about it is you've got a little longer flight time. So I noticed 37, 38 minutes, no problem, which is a long time. But the quality of this new 1-inch sensor is the big deal. Now, I've zoomed this in all the way. I use the optical zoom and the digital zoom. Even though I'm shooting in 4K, I've zoomed it all the way in, and the quality looks really good, as you can see both from the big screen and from the controller view there in the lower right corner. I want to go in a little more detail. So here's the same shot again, shot at just 1x normal. Here's the optical zoom 2x, and then the digital zoom to 3x. And I can tell you this, I've done a lot of photography the last 15 years, and this thing does a very good job at this price point around $2,000. You just can't beat it for scouting. Now, it's got a lot of other features. It's got auto takeoff, auto land, which does exactly what you think. It also has a button there on the left-hand side called Focus Track, which is outstanding. So whether you're shooting video or stills, it helps keep your imagery in focus. And believe it or not, it even has waypoints. So if you want to plan a mission, set a speed, all those fun things, you can do that, and then you can manipulate the drone while it's flying the mission. And this is one of the few that has it. It has true vertical shooting. So whether you're shooting in stills or video, you can grab true vertical imagery. Now, Mike, we've talked about drones a lot, and one of the biggest things about any drone is what kind of quality is the data you get out of it. Whether you're doing scouting or whatever you might need a drone for, these still images are excellent from a drone at this price point. As you can see here, the clarity is very good. But as you might suspect, here on This Week in Agribusiness, we don't care a whole bunch about still images. We want to see the video, and the video quality is excellent. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad, for that story. And folks, don't go away. When we come back, Max Armstrong will take us through some of Case's new high horsepower tractors. So leave it here. One thing we know about Max Armstrong is that he's a big fan of red equipment. But he's not only good about talking about the old Case equipment, he can talk about the new stuff as well. He joins us now with an update from Case's high horsepower machinery.
At the 2025 Farm Progress Show, where we were with the folks of Case IH looking around at the new equipment on the lot here, we had the opportunity to visit with Mark Burns, whose expertise is the high horsepower tractors, and you have high horsepower. I'm looking at 785 over your shoulder there. Talk with us a little bit about what's new, Mark.
So the 785 Quad Track is the newest addition to the Steiger family of high horsepower four-wheel drive tractors. Looking at a 10% increase over the 715 that was introduced a couple of years ago, really helping drive home that power, productivity, and performance that you expect from a piece of equipment.
Especially helpful in tillage applications out there in the field.
Great for tillage, so if we're pulling rippers, if we're pulling high-speed discs, or even for those folks that are into big air seeders. You know,
absolutely.
Seeders keep getting bigger,
They
the
do.
tanks get bigger, and the hydraulic requirements to run them is there too.
Talk about the technology on this machine. Fill that out for us a little bit. Give us a feel.
Right, so every Steiger offered comes with one of two different tech packages. So you get your choice of one or two displays in the cab. There's choices when it comes to GPS receivers and the correction that comes with them. They all are connectivity included. And then we have certain features of automation, like our automatic end of row turning, which is our AccuTurn, and then AccuSync, which is actually information vehicle to vehicle sharing. So you can share maps, guidance lines, the whole 9 yards between 6 different vehicles in that same field.
Field ops?
And then field ops, but that remote tool, being able to monitor not only your fleet, knowing where each piece is, but then also the performance of each one. So if you've got an underperforming vehicle, we can identify that, whether it's an actual implement or vehicle issue, or maybe it's an operator education opportunity.
Is that helpful for the dealer to respond to the producer as well?
Sure it is, because it's one of those things, if the producer gives access to the dealer to view that data, they can actually see what's going on, if there's any active fault codes or what might be causing that issue. So they can do an awful lot of the diagnosing prior to them ever leaving the dealership and making sure they bring the right parts the first time.
The thing that strikes me is you guys keep coming forward with innovation. There are the ups and downs of the ag economy. We've seen that. That's historic. That always happens. But the innovation keeps flowing, it seems, from you folks at Case IH. You don't give up.
No, it's all about how can we advance to the next level to make sure the producers are getting what they need from their equipment, making their operation more productive and ultimately more profitable.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate the visit. Nice to talk to you again.
Yes, thanks, Max. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Max, for that update. It is a treat to see those high horsepower machines out running in the field, and I bet there are some running this harvest season. Thank you all so much for tuning in to us this week. We do appreciate it, and be sure to join us next time right here for This Week in Agribusiness. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studios. For more than 70 years and 3 generations, Strauss has been manufacturing high-performance German-engineered workwear, work boots, and safety equipment. Prepare for the next growing season at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.